Hello everyone, it's really nice to be here at another StreetSpace workshop. They're always awesome. My name's Jane Clossick and I am Senior Lecturer in Architecture at London Metropolitan University and the coordinator of the Cities Research Group. And today I'm going to talk about a project that I've done in the last few years with the Cities Research Group, which looked at the capacity that different sorts of architecture on streets allow for people to participate in political and planning processes. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to planning in the London Borough of Southwark, which is where the street that we were looking at is situated. It's called the Old Kent Road. For those of you familiar with London, you probably know it. It's messy and it's dirty and it's really exciting and vibrant, and it's got a huge depth of industrial uses and a wide range of businesses in its hinterlands. I'm going to talk about the context of the planning change that's taking place in Southwark, and then I'm going to outline two theories that underpin what I'm talking about today. Something called urban depth, which I wrote a PhD about, and an idea called the space of possibilities. And I'm going to look at two case studies. This is sounding really complicated, but it's actually quite short. Two case studies of consultation activities that took place on the Old Kent Road and how physically different they were, and the impact that that had on the nature of the participation and consultation that was possible. And hopefully all of this is going to inform you when you're on your walk today. So this image shows the businesses in the Old Kent Road opportunity area, which is defined in the London Plan. And this is the businesses that were there in 2016 when we did a survey of the opportunity area. And it was dense with businesses. And it's debatable, but the London Plan proposed 20,000 new homes in this opportunity area, and perhaps not made explicit, but a transition in the type of economic activities towards the service industry, towards things that took up less physical space, and an inevitable consequence of lack of space, which is the case all over London, a gentrification of the type of businesses. So quite a lot of this was small vehicle repair shops, you know, people who got their hands very dirty when they were working and looked dirty, and things that aren't attractive, and activities that people fear are noisy and smell, which actually they don't really, but and in terms of who had been contacted or involved in making decisions around the new planning policy, which is called the Old Kent Road Area Action Plan, in 2018, only 14% of those businesses had been contacted by the London Borough of Southwark to talk about the plans. So when we were surveying those people, we asked them, do you know what's proposed for this area? And a vast majority of them had no idea. And considering the number of businesses that would be affected or are being affected by the enormous amount of planning change and the consequent planning applications which are being accepted, it seems and continues to seem absurd to us that the nature of participation of all those people in this planning future is not widely discussed. How do you get those people to participate? And the first theory I'm going to talk about is urban depth. So thinking about architecture and the city in terms of a structure of depth that goes beyond the facade allows you to start thinking about everything that's contributing to the life on the street. And all of the qualities that I've listed on this slide are what allow people to start participating in life on the street, and therefore what will allow them to participate in planning consultation activities. So where a building is on the street network, how accessible it is, its position inside the urban block, is it towards the front, can you see it, or is it right at the back? We were thinking about this last night on the ground floor here. The windows are painted out, so yes, you can't see what's happening inside. So it might be something you really want to do, but if you can't see it, you don't know it's there. Similarly, signage, what is the quality of the signage? Do you even know that there's something happening in there? How are the thresholds and the boundaries? Is it easy to get across that threshold? Or is it threatening? Or does it feel exclusive and maybe not appropriate for somebody like you to cross that threshold? And then is the relevant knowledge for the event that's taking place, if it's a participatory event, is that communicated in an appropriate way? And is gatekeeping welcoming? Is there somebody on that door inviting people in and making them feel welcome? And then a broader, more conceptual level of thinking. The space of possibilities is a theory from a woman called Eileen Conn, who was part of the Southwark Planning Network. And she argued that power is structured in two ways. It's structured in a vertical, horizontal way, so in a standard government, national government, local authority, planning department power structure. And then there's another type of power, which is horizontal participatory. The horizontal peer organisations, community groups, business associations, grassroots networks. And the links between those will often be much more fragmented and varied, but much more flexible and resilient. And that those two types of power organisations come together in what she describes as the space of possibilities. And she talked about that as a conceptual space, but I'm arguing that it's very much a physical space as well. I think we're in one of those spaces right now, in fact, because we have different sorts of organisations of power coming together in one physical space to communicate with each other. And so the two events which I'm going to talk about, the first was a business consultation meeting which was operated by Southwark Council, and it took place in this church, New Covenant Church on Old Kent Road. And you can see, perhaps not very clearly, but those windows are very hard to see through. And the event actually took place in a hall behind, this is a sort of bookshop place where they have like leaflets about Christianity, this particular brand of Christianity that they do in this church. And the business consultation meeting took place in a hall behind that, and there was absolutely zero signage on the outside to say that it was happening. It was invite only, so it was only people on the Southwark's list who got invited, and they only have about half the businesses in the area on their list. And so we broke down, according to all these aspects of urban depth that I listed earlier, how much does this event fit with being as participatory and open as possible according to those categories. So position in the street network, it's very accessible in the street network, it's right on the Old Kent Road. Position in the urban block, very, very good, it's right on the front. However, no signage, and you couldn't see what was going on inside. There was very little information shared about it. And in the end, 45 people attended of 9,500 employees in the area. And we don't actually know what happened at this event because I wasn't there, and there's no records of what happened in the discussion in the public domain, and no record of how any of that discussion impacted changes to planning policy. We organised a series of two events as part of the London Festival of Architecture in sequential years, 2018, 2019, where we attempted to share knowledge of the coming planning policy changes and to gather information from the people who they would be affecting. And the second of these two events took place at an urban room, which is a pop-up occupation of a high street shop called 231 Old Kent Road. And It's very different, as you can see. It was spatially accessible, but really importantly, it had a big open front door. And I think the fact the other one was a church could potentially make it less accessible to some people who might not ever have walked through a door like that before, whereas almost everybody's walked through the door of a high street shop. So that possible barrier is gone if it's in a familiar building. The outside of the shop was designed by architects to be as open as possible. We ensured there was loads of signage about what we were doing, and we had students standing outside gathering people in. We did our best to publicise it, but we came across really the same problem that the other consultation came across, and that is people who run businesses are really busy. And in order to participate successfully in consultation, you've got to have a basic level of knowledge also about what you're participating in. And educating people to be capable of participating and responding to consultations, I think is one of the most profound problems that you can't solve with architecture. However, don't screw it up with architecture. So space can be deployed strategically to either grant access to decision making or prevent access to decision making. And I have my suspicions that that employment strategically to prevent access is not always used benignly. It's not always an accident that people don't have access to decision-making spaces. And I think these should be a fundamental criteria when you're considering selecting the site for any kind of consultation event. And these criteria are things which, if you ran a business yourself, ran a shop, you would choose the site that got the most people in through the door. It really isn't rocket science. In fact, it's incredibly obvious and depressing. So it's our ethical responsibility, I argue, as built environment professionals, as people who understand the impact that space and urban depth and accessibility, physical accessibility has on people's capacity to participate in urban change. I think it's really important that we recognise how valuable the space of possibilities is, how important it is to bring together the two different networks of power, and that that happens in actual places. And to reiterate once again, the space of possibilities is most accessible when it has long opening hours, when what it is clearly communicated, both with signage but also with a view of what's happening inside, that it's got good publicity, welcoming gatekeeping, and that the street location, its position in the urban depth at the front of the depth structure, good signage, clear entrances, and not too many thresholds or physical or psychological barriers to cross to get inside.